I told myself 3 specific statements. At that time, they didn't seem big at all. They were, just 3 statements that helped me get myself moving. And at that point, again, it wasn't a big deal, but because I've used this in my life so many times, I've decided to name it. And it just came to me that I wanted to name it my Infinite Trifecta. The 3 statements were: find your power, determine your purpose, and create your own path. Those were the 3 statements that were able to get me moving at that particular time. I call it my Infinite Trifecta because infinite means never ending. Everything's going to change in your life. We're all going to be in different parts of our lives. We're all going to suffer different things in our lives that are going to be sometimes tragic, sometimes a loss, sometimes a betrayal, these types of things. And the 3 statements make up the trifecta. Now, it's not just saying those 3 statements that make everything magically okay. I have, in the last 10 years, or actually 25 years, have decided or have created what I now call it's all in my head, this trifecta toolbox that I now use to pull from whenever I have specific difficulties in my life. The toolbox that I've created, the trifecta toolbox, is filled with all kinds of different things because not everything works the same or works for one particular issue that may work for something else. So in my trifecta toolbox, I have amazing social networks that I've created. I have my children. I have my family. I continue to self-learn. There's self-awareness and self-development that I continue on an ongoing basis to fill that trifecta toolbox. And I use that quite often when I need to answer the 3 statements or to fill those 3 statements. So my trifecta or Infinite Trifecta starts off as 3 questions. So how do I find my power? What is my purpose? And how do I create my own path? Then I pull from my toolbox what I need to carry through with those 3 statements or those 3 questions. So when have I used this or used the Infinite Trifecta? Well, obviously 25 years ago, when I was at my lowest point, my power came from asking for help. Going to my doctor and saying something is definitely wrong, I need some help. My power or my purpose was to get healthy and to get better and to figure out how to get back to who I was before I suffered the losses. And creating my own path basically was the biggest one, was forgiving those that hurt me and figuring out how now to live the way I lived and doing the things that I love to do, that I stopped doing for probably about 2 years. I've also used the trifecta when I separated from my husband 10 years ago, who was a drug addict, an alcoholic, and an abuser. And the aftermath of living through that with 2 young children at the time they were age 4 and 7, and being left with $40,000 in debt, an absentee father who has never supported them in the last 10 years and who to this day I'm not exactly sure where he is. Having children, not really being able to even give them those answers. So the power at this point in time was my children. Leaving my husband, the power came from my kids. The purpose was to keep us safe and for the well-being of them. And the power came, the creating my path was continuing. I'm a kickboxer, and I've been a kickboxer for the last 13 years. Continuing with that particular avenue was one of the things that probably saved me for the 10 years. I continue to kickbox. I coach 3 nights a week. I attend classes probably 4 nights a week. Well, sometimes. If I'm being totally honest, okay, it's 3 nights a week. I'd like to say it's more than that. But I also created the path in the 10 years of just continual healing and pulling from that toolbox. So I hike, I kayak, I get together with friends. Sometimes I might need just self-care, and that's where the path comes from. So different things are going to need different things from my toolbox depending on what's actually happening in my life. One other time that I use this particular process or system that I call it is when my son was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And it was 8 months after my separation. He was just about turning 8. And I can remember being in the hospital, probably feeling at my lowest point. Because after only 8 months of dealing with the separation, the aftermath of it all, not exactly sure what I'm going to do at this point, and now I have a son who's sick in my mind. I know nothing about diabetes. It doesn't run in my family. He's the 6% of children who get it for unknown reasons. And I remember being in the hospital with him that day or overnight and feeling at my lowest, my weakest, felt like it was the biggest pity party in my head ever. And I remember thinking, why do bad things happen to me all the time? Why is it that, nothing good could ever happen to me? How am I supposed to do this? It was the negative self-talk of all negative self-talk nights in that hospital with him. The next day, I woke up and he was finally feeling better because his blood sugars were not 44 and they're supposed to be like 4.4. And he was feeling good. So he was running ahead of me in the hospital. And I'm walking behind him, shoulders slumped, feeling extremely horribly defeated. And I looked at him, and as I was walking, I was looking kind of in each room as I was passing him because he wanted to go to the playroom. He wanted to go play because he's 7. So as I'm looking in each of the rooms, I see so many worse off children that were in there. And I looked at my son running ahead of me, and I thought, yeah, you know what? He's running. He's laughing, he's smiling, he's happy. This is something that is not curable, but it's treatable. And he's going to be with me for a really, really long time. So again, my power came from him running in front of me and knowing that, you know what, this is just another thing that we're just going to have to get through. My purpose was for him to show him that he can live a normal life. Yes, it's going to be different, but he's going to live a full life. And I didn't want him feeling sorry for himself, and I didn't want him thinking that life now was over. And that was my purpose. Creating my path was basically learning everything I could, supporting him through the transition into that condition. And now I have to say he's a 18-year-old, wonderful man who, he's 18. I guess it's almost a man. It's hard to feel like he's a man because he's still my little boy. He's going to university, taking law and justice, and he's on an insulin pump, and things are great. Some other times that I've used this was at the time when I lost $35,000 in a business venture gone wrong, which only happened about 3 years ago. And I used the Infinite Trifecta process as well when if I have fitness goals, if I have during my career, which I seem to be switching quite often. I have many, many careers, and I still continue to do that. However, the Infinite Trifecta is always what I turn to. Find your power, determine your purpose, and create your own path. Some days when I just wake up and I don't feel like I have really any focus or direction, I ask myself those same 3 questions, and then I pull from the toolbox. What do I need to get to where I want to be using the things that I've created? It takes a little while to fill that toolbox, but I'm really happy to say that I have such a full toolbox of things that when things do go wrong, sometimes it doesn't really seem like it's the end of the world. So now I help people learn about, or I coach people about my Infinite Trifecta. I help them to fill their toolboxes so that they can live a wonderful life despite the not so wonderful stuff that happens. So my Infinite Trifecta: find your power, determine your purpose, create your own path. What's in your toolbox? Thank you.